years after the disappointment that was All Stars 1, Drag Race had the ultimate comeback, All Stars 2. All Stars 2 is what is known pretty much universally at this point as the best season of Drag Race ever. It really was lightning in a bottle. 8 episodes of the best, duking it out in some of the best challenges we've seen, wearing the highest caliber of drag we had seen, and bringing some of the most controversial and intense drama we had seen up to this point. This season really is tens across the board and gives us all the things we love about Drag Race and then some. Welcome back to The Drag Detective. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about the iconic All Stars 2. Of course, we will be breaking down all of the Riggory. We're joking ourselves if we don't think a lot of what made this season great wasn't puppeteered by the producers behind the scenes. I always say that Drag Race would not be good without a bit of Riggory, and this season is a testament to that in my opinion. The producers' hands are all over this season, but it isn't in a way that feels obvious, which we will get into. But first, if you are not already, make sure you are following me on my Instagram and my Twitter. Also, if you are able, check out my Patreon. I have lots of fun stuff up there, including a Drag Detective Discord server and draft for All Star 6, and some videos that are patron only. So go check that out if you are able. Now, let's get back to All Stars 2. Everything about this season of Drag Race was new, so why not shake things up with the format of this series to go along with it? First, I'm going to break down every queen that was chosen to be on this season, because on All Stars, the Riggory happens way before the queens ever step foot in the workroom. The main characters, the centers of controversy, the triple threat, Detox, each of them earned their spot on All Stars, all having iconic moments on Season 5. But with this new format where the queens would be the ones sending each other home, not RuPaul, it only makes sense to pin friends against each other. And Detox was one of the most popular and tight-knit friend groups on the show, so picking them to be kind of the guinea pigs of this new format was genius, and I think is a lot of the reason why this season is as good as it was. What the producers were probably hoping would happen with these three on together is exactly what we do see. They can't send each other home, and it leads to some very controversial and upsetting moments as the season progresses. This is also why I think we have the pairs of Ginger and Katya and Alyssa and Coco on together as well. Alyssa and Coco had one of the most heated rivalries in all of Drag Race history. Of course, it makes total sense to bring them back on this season together. They do say right off the bat when they enter the workroom that they have made amends and are over all of the drama that was rampant in their story arc on Season 5. But imagine the drama if one were to win and the other were to be in the bottom. We don't actually see it play out, but the temptation from producers to even have that as a possibility, I think makes total sense as to why they were both cast. And also, they're both just incredible drag performers. Katya was the breakout star of Season 7, the last season to have aired before All Stars was filmed. The way her kooky and bizarre nature captivated audiences made her an obvious choice to come back for this season. And bringing on Ginger Minj, who wasn't really a fan favorite in the slightest, but was very close to winning the crown on her season, and who Katya has a close friendship with, they are best friends if you didn't know, ensures that Katya has storyline potential as the season progresses. That leaves our three outliers, Adore, Tatiana, and Fifi. Well, the artist formerly known as Fifi, now Jeremy, but we're just going to call her Fifi because we are talking about his time on Drag Race. Adore and Fifi were obvious picks for this season. I mean, Fifi was actually cast on All Stars 1 before she was cut last minute due to some legal troubles. Fifi was the biggest villain Drag Race had ever seen. and with both her extremely competitive nature as well as the major glow up in her drag since her season, she was probably cast literally the second this season was imagined by producers. Adore was, at this time, the biggest fan favorite. I mean, her social media numbers proved it. With as many iconic figures as there were on season 6, Adore stood out among them with fans as the lovable weirdo and a relatable hero. Adore was at her career peak, I would say, at this point as well, so her casting was also not shocking in the slightest. The real black horse of the competition this season was Tatiana. She was from the oldest season on this cast, all the way back in season 2, and while she definitely had fans and followers, I wouldn't consider her a fan favorite at this time. I think the real reason she was cast is because she isn't afraid to call out bullshit, especially on season 2. She speaks her mind, and on a season that called for snaky behavior and controversy, producers knew she would play the game. Before we start to break down all the episodes, I want to mention a sentiment shared by many fans of the show. All Stars 2 was made so Alaska could have a crown, just like All Stars 1 was created so Chad could have a crown. It makes sense. Alaska was doing things no other queens were. Her music was extremely successful. She was making a brand for herself and hitting levels of success never before seen by queens on this series. Just looking at the cast, I would say Alaska has more friends and connections on it than almost any other queen. There are 4 other season 5 queens on this cast, including 2 of her closest friends in Detox and Roxy Andrews, as well as Adore, who Alaska had worked with on music prior to this season. And in a season where relationships you forged with the queens prior to the start of filming made such a big impact, it seems Alaska was set up pretty well from the jump. But let's look at the season and we'll answer the question of if All Stars 2 was rigged for Alaska at the end. Episode 1, the talent show. What an amazing concept. It's no secret as to why this challenge has become a staple of every All Star season since. This challenge really puts control in the hands of the queens and lets them create whatever performance they want as a reintroduction to the fans and to the series. I always say that usually the first few episodes of a season are not very rigged, as producers are sort of seeing how the queens are performing overall before they start to see the big picture that they want to paint form. But All Stars is different. The favorites are established, the underdogs are clear, and the narrative arcs are basically already set up. So we're going to see some of that riggory actually right off the bat. One thing I'm always going to look at in these All Stars episodes is how many queens they choose to put in the bottom. There's never any rhyme or reason to it. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's more. But looking at who they chose to put in the bottom and why is always going to be a great indicator for what storylines they're setting up, but also which queens they're willing to lose. The first episode has Tatiana and Roxy come out on top as the top 2 All-Stars of the week, with Ginger and Alaska both getting positive critiques as well. I would have to agree with this. Alaska and Ginger both sing and they both sound great, bringing exactly what you would expect them to bring in a performance like this. Roxy and Tatiana both stand out by doing something unexpected, with doing spoken word and burlesque. I'm just going to say this, Tatiana still has the best talent show of all time, in my opinion. I think it was very smart to let Tatiana snag the win here, as she should have. I don't particularly think she fit into the producers' long-term plans for the season, but with such an amazing performance, episode 1, it would have been a shame to see her get sidelined for someone more important that they maybe wanted to highlight, like in Alaska here. This allowed Tatiana to become the huge underdog moving forward, and a fan favorite literally to this day. Now, the bottom placements are where things get a bit confused, and I'm gonna say it, I think a little rigged. There's no arguing that the artist formerly known as Fifi Coco, and Adore had the three weakest performances. But the way that the critiques were dealt out, as well as some other factors, cry production interference for me. I want to hone in on Coco and Adore specifically. Coco has stated since the season aired that she had a whole Janet Jackson dance performance planned, which makes sense as Janet is Coco's thing. But last minute, production told her she had to do something else since they weren't going to pay for the music rights to be cleared. Okay, cool, makes sense. But it makes me feel bad for Coco as well, because either production didn't tell them about this rule beforehand, or they just didn't make it clear enough. Obviously, Coco's performance in the talent show was not good, but for something she had to kind of rush to put together, it makes sense as to why it wasn't as strong as it could have been. This isn't necessarily Riggory, it's just something I see as unfair and sad for Coco to have to do. Now for Adore. She and Ginger basically have the same performance. They both sang pretty slow tempo ballads. I would argue Adore's had more energy than Ginger's even. Now Ginger gets pretty good critiques, while Adore gets run over by a dump truck. To me, her performance warranted a low placement at worst. They could have critiqued her outfit. I mean, let's be real, it wasn't very flattering, and maybe critiqued the pace of her song, but then saved her from the bottom and had the bottom just be Fifi and Coco, who objectively had the worst performances. The choice to make this a bottom three, as well as give Adore the harshest critiques of the three, just feels off. If we look at how many bottom placements we have each episode, it goes bottom 3, bottom 3, bottom 2, bottom 3, then bottom 2 until the last episode with this format where it goes back to a bottom 3. There's no consistency, and we see in later talent shows there was always a bottom 2. In All Stars 3, 4, 5, and 6, the talent show has a bottom 2. This episode, I think, warranted a bottom 2, not a bottom 3. I understand bringing in the bottom 3 if there were 3 queens who truly did not do well, but that just wasn't the case for me in this episode. As to why I think Adore's critiques were some of the harshest critiques we have seen over the show's entire history, I think it was because of the 3 queens in this bottom. Adore was the only one without a story arc set up already. Coco had her storyline with Alyssa that they could explore, and Fifi had the will she, won't she redemption arc starting to get set up. Adore had not much. She didn't have close friends on the cast, really, that we've seen from other seasons. She didn't have any loose ends from past seasons to come back to. To me, it seemed like production wasn't sure what to do with her other than to highlight her niche style of drag not being up to the caliber with the rest of the queens and her insecurities surrounding this. Maybe Adore had shared off camera her feelings of inadequacy she was having, comparing herself to the other queens here, and production kind of jumped on this as a storyline. Who knows, but this 2-episode arc she has definitely is jump-started by the critiques she receives this episode. Critiques that I feel like were not warranted to be as nasty as they were. When it comes to eliminations on All Stars with this format, I'm not going to say any of them were rigged. Bottom placements, sure, but the queen who wins the lip sync for your legacy has the option to send home whoever she wants. So in my opinion, yes, an elimination can be unfair, but it can't be rigged because it is all up to the discretion of the winning queen. Were producers hoping the winner of this lip sync for your legacy would send home Adore? I kind of think so, but in the end, we see Roxy wins the lip sync, rightfully so, and sends home Coco. Now we go into Snatch Game with 9 queens. Oops, 8 queens, because Adore quits, and I can't blame you, Adore.
They went in really harsh that first day, and if it had been me in your position, who knows, I might have done the same thing.
So, Snatch Game, Alaska and Katya win. That checks out. Fifi is in the top as well. That checks out. Detox, Tati, and Roxy are in the bottom 3. Uh, Again, I feel like this could have been a bottom 2. Did Detox do well in the Snatch game? No, but her runway was still to this day one of the greatest runways Drag Race has ever seen. And Tatiana and Roxy both did much, much worse in both of the categories of this episode, Snatch Game and Runway. I do think with Alaska winning that having both of the other members of Rolaska Talks in the bottom and up for elimination just makes the whole situation that much more dramatic. So I can't blame producers for it. But yeah, Alaska wins the lip sync, which she definitely won, and she sends home Tatiana, and I can't say that it wasn't deserved. So now we have the Herstory of the World Musical Challenge. And here is where I think the first example of true Riggory kicks in. I'm just going to say it. Alaska was 1000% saved from being in the bottom this episode. This is one of those challenges in All Stars where I think every queen did a good job. Katya was the least good, I think. And Alaska, I also think, did the least good. If you watch, Alaska really is off with her lip sync the entire time. She is constantly behind in the lip sync and trying to catch up and figure out where she is. It's not super, super distracting or anything, but in a challenge where everybody did a solid job, little things like that matter. Instead, Ginger is thrown in the bottom, and her terrible runway is used as justification. There aren't any low placements in this entire season, and I always look at the low placement as kind of like a warning, like, hey, this is what you're doing wrong, fix it moving forward, and that would have been perfect for Adore in episode 1, Detox in episode 2, and Ginger in this episode. There were positive elements to all of their performance or runways in each of those episodes that I felt like could have saved them from being up for elimination. But instead, we just have bottom 3s, and then a bottom 2, back to a bottom 3, and then switch back over to bottom 2. It's very confusing, and it definitely feels like they just switched the number depending on what they need to happen in the episode. This episode, we just have a bottom 2, probably because a bottom 3 would mean Alaska would get thrown in there, and we don't want that to happen so quick in the season, since she is Alaska. As for the tops, we have Alyssa and Detox. That checks out, but also they had two of the most obviously hilarious parts in the Rusical. This challenge, much like the Divas Live challenge and All Stars 3, felt like the parts were not all equal. You had Alyssa, Detox, and Fifi, who had these crazy verses that gave them lots of room to camp it up. But then you had like Katya and Roxy's parts, which were just like nowhere near as fun or campy or energetic. It does feel like there are certain parts that can win and certain parts that can't, which is already kind of unfair. Like, I don't know what more Katya could have done with her part besides have a better dress and wig because to amp up the performance. Alyssa and Detox lip sync and Alyssa wins. I actually don't have a problem with that. I know a lot of people do think that Detox should have won, but I thought Detox did well, but Alyssa was just a little bit better in my opinion. But it's also not rocket science why Alyssa won. Detox had chosen Katya to go home, and Alyssa had chosen Ginger. Now, Katya was the fan favorite who already won a challenge. Ginger was not really well liked by the fandom at this point and had not won a challenge. I mean, come on. So we lose Ginger and we move on to episode 4. We have the drag movie sequels. Listen, I don't think Katya was robbed. Based on track records, she had the worst out of the final 3. But Katya was robbed in this episode. Why was she even in the bottom? She literally doesn't even get bad critiques, and then she's in the bottom for no reason. This was a very clean and easy bottom 2 of Roxy and Alyssa, and they threw Katya in there. And I just don't know why, especially because we had a bottom 2 the previous week. So why did we have to go back to a bottom 3 this episode, especially when it did not feel warranted? Alaska and Fifi are in the top. I agree with that, but come on, Fifi won that lip sync. I mean, we're all in agreement, right? And what a stupid mistake for giving the lip sync win to Alaska. Think about how much more heated Mirrorgate could have been if it were Fifi who eliminated Alyssa. It was a missed opportunity. Narratively, it makes no sense. Based on the lip sync itself, it makes no sense. This very much felt like favoritism for Alaska because I do think Fifi beat her in that lip sync. Got to Be Real is a groovy, fun 70s song, and Fifi brought exactly that to the table. But because Alaska looks like Lil Pound Cake, she wins. Which, that look was not 2 looks. It was 1 look. It was a garbage bag over 1 look. But we've been new, I'll move on. Alaska sends home Alyssa, and we move on to probably the best episode of Drag Race ever, Fifi's Elimination episode. Let's discuss Fifi, shall we? The way they painted this queen to literally be the devil, Miss Beelzebub herself, this season, and for what? Being strategic? Sorry, but throwing off your competitors is called good strategy. Wait, am I the villain of the season? Obviously, Fifi is a competitive individual, which is good because she's in a competition. I always say if things go too perfectly, it's probably for a reason. And this episode is start to finish flawless narratively. It is too good to be true or to be not rigged. The 2 queens who definitely went home way too soon, back. The queen who has been painted as the villain in almost every episode, gone. Alyssa getting revenge on her, talking shit behind her back, iconic. I really would not change anything in this episode. The placements were correct, the lip sync wins were correct, everything was correct, but it's just a little too perfect for my liking how everything worked out. But anyway, we have Tatiana and Alyssa both back in the competition, but as we see, it's not for long, as they go home back to back in the following episodes. Now, fans love to argue that both of their eliminations were rigged. But let's break down what leads to their eliminations to see if all of the outcry was warranted. So the next episode is the commercial challenge, and there's really 3 aspects of this challenge the queens had to hit. First, they had to create a commercial that was on brand with their drag personas and have the product that they are advertising be something recognizable to their character. It also had to be something tangible that could be produced and sold, since the winners of the challenge would have their products made and sold at DragCon. Last, their commercial had to just be funny and entertaining. So let's break down these performances one by one, because this is another challenge where I feel like everyone did well, and it comes down to really small details that determine placements. First, we have Roxy with her wig glue instructional DVD. Was it on brand? Definitely. Roxy's wig reveal is one of the biggest moments of all time, and probably her biggest moment on the show. Was this a tangible product? Kind of. I'm guessing she wasn't actually going to, record a DVD, so it might just be, a box, but the wig glue that comes with it especially could have been a real thing. Lastly, was the commercial funny? Sort of. It was meh. It was not the best, but it was not terrible. Katya is next, and she has Crisis Control, which is basically a spray to make you not have a crisis. Was it on brand? Oh, for sure. Her anxiety was one of the biggest storylines that she had on season 7, and she had already talked at this point about how she had learned to cope with it better for All Stars 2. Was it a tangible product? Yeah, I mean, it would just be a spray bottle of water with her label printed on it. Was the commercial funny? Yes, definitely. It was the best made commercial in my eyes. Alright, Alyssa Edwards has basically speed pills, but Alyssa Edwards speed. Was it on brand? Yeah, I would say so. Was it tangible? I mean, yeah, they're not actually selling speed, but you could sell the bottle with just some Tic Tacs in it or something. Was the commercial funny? I guess. It was good. I didn't have a problem with it, but I wasn't like cracking up or anything. Now we have Detox with her trash talking receptacle. Was it on brand? Sure. I mean, when I think of Detox, I don't think about talking shit necessarily or funny catchphrases. I think more about fashion, but maybe that's just me. Sort of, but eh. Was it a tangible product? I mean, again, sort of, but like I think of all of the products, this was the least accessible one to make and sell as an actual product. Was the commercial funny? Not really. I mean, she's basically just reciting catchphrases. It's fine. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's bleh. Now we have Alaska, who has fashion tape. Is it on brand? I mean, the product itself isn't really, but the commercial was, so I guess so. Was it a tangible product? Yes. Was the commercial funny? Definitely. Last, we have Tati, who has a tea set for talking shit. Is this on brand? For sure. It's a callback to when she had a talking tea with Tati or something segment on All Stars 1. Was it a tangible product? Sure. Was the commercial funny? It wasn't the funniest, but it definitely had its moments. So, putting that all together, putting all of it into consideration, in my opinion, it makes sense why Katya and Alaska won. They had really funny commercials, and their products, I think, were the easiest to sell and mass produce for DragCon. Just slap some stickers on a roll of tape and a spray bottle. So that leaves Tati, Alyssa, Detox, and Roxy, and two of them have to be in the bottom. Not sure why it's not three this time, but whatever. In my opinion, Detox is the most obvious choice of these four for the bottom. Her product was, I think, the least branded towards her and the hardest to actually make. And her commercial, I think, was the least successful of the four. And again, this challenge is very hard to judge because they all did well, so it does come down to little details. I guess the other person I would have put in the bottom would be Roxy. As the judges point out, she's talking about being the queen of wig glue and wig reveals, and then she does a wig reveal and her second wig is coming off. It's just a tiny little moment, but when everyone did such a good job, it's, again, the little things, and your wig coming off in a wig reveal isn't good advertising, I guess. I think that this actually would have been a really great storyline and a dramatic moment. Because we see Alaska wins the lip sync against Katya, rightfully so. Sorry, Katya stans. And then she's forced to make the decision between sending home another member of Rolaska Tox. Is she going to pick Roxy? Is she going to pick Detox? Roxy lended her the shirt, but Detox had done better in the competition. It would have been a really interesting storyline. And it seems way more dramatic and compelling to me than Alaska making the easy decision to send Tatiana home again. Do I think Tatiana was robbed? It's hard to say. This challenge was so close. I can see justifications for saving everyone and throwing them all in the bottom. But to me, Detox was the clear worst of the four, and the fact that she was saved from the bottom does make me raise an eyebrow or two. Hell, maybe even three. However that works. Whether they wanted Rolaska Tox to continue on together or just wanted to get rid of at least one of the returning queens right away, who knows? But I do think Tatiana gets kind of a raw deal this episode, especially when she had such a fun runway and ended up in a pretty hopeless situation next to Roxy in the bottom. As we see, Katya chose Roxy to go home. I think if producers wanted Tatiana to stay, they could have chosen Katya as the winner of the lip sync. Not that she deserved it, but I think with all the decisions made in this episode, it's clear that they were fine with Tatiana being the next to go. So now we have the penultimate episode, the infamous Makeover Challenge episode. The episode where Alaska has her tantrum, and the first time she's in the bottom. The episode where Detox shockingly sends Alyssa Edwards home on the anniversary of her mother's death. The episode where we meet the legend, icon, and star, Pat. This episode isn't rigged. I'll just say that. Detox and Katya were the best of the week. Detox won the lip sync, and she picked who she picked. Now, I think we all know it was probably Roxy's time. It was probably before this episode, Roxy's time, and Alyssa should not have went home here, But it's not Riggory. That was the decision that Detox made with the power that was fairly given to her. I also want to just quickly mention something that Alaska said in an interview later on. Obviously, she has her big tantrum this episode, and after the season had aired and after she had won, a producer said, in just like an offhand comment or something, that if she had not had that tantrum, she would not have won. And that's interesting to me because it seems like they were doing subtle things here and there throughout the season to set her up for a win. But I also think that Alaska was kind of shooting herself in the foot as the season went on because she was editing herself so much and wasn't saying things that maybe she wanted to say because they might come off as rude and the fans might attack her, or she didn't want to come off as the villain. And I think that moment when she does explode was such good TV and was such a moment that it kind of rounds out her character arc as trying to be perfect and trying to desperately win this crown, and finally it makes her snap. Do I think if she didn't have this that they really would not have crowned her? I'm not sure, because it seems like that's what was being set up already, just from the subtle things the producers have been doing. I kind of don't think that's true, that statement the producer said was true, because I don't think that they would have crowned Katya. I really just don't think Katya was going to win the season in any regard. So, would they have crowned Detox? I mean, maybe. It's an interesting thing to think about, but I'm somewhat tempted to believe that maybe that producer was not being fully truthful, or maybe we only got half of what they really meant, because I just don't see Alaska not winning this season. I just don't see it. But let's move on to the finale, and come on, Alaska deserved to win. Her winning was not rigged, in my opinion, especially given the track records that they all had. Now, we can talk about in my next video what maybe might have happened if the season wasn't rigged. But under these circumstances, with the track records the three of them had, Alaska had the best track record and sent home the most girls, which is really the big drama and the big catch and theme of the season. So, was Katya robbed? I don't think so. If anything, possibly Detox was robbed, but I truly think Alaska deservedly wins the season. Overall, the main gripes people have with the season is the favoritism of Detox and the mistreatment of Alyssa and Tatiana. I will agree that Detox was definitely favored throughout the season, but it's also very clear to me that they were the vessels in which the production decided to tell the story of the new twist. And look how it turned out. Constant controversy, everyone talking about the season. Production navigated this season perfectly. We have Alyssa and Tatiana, the martyrs of this new twist, and fan favorites whose eliminations caused online outcry and discourse, still discussed literally 5 years later. We have Detox seen as the big bads of the season, more so Detox and Alaska rather than Roxy. And we have Katya, the unlikely hero, the unlikely underdog, who emerges as the only one left who can defeat Detox in the end. And that is why so many people say Katya was robbed. Narratively, a more satisfying ending would be Katya coming out on top and Detox losing at their own game. It would be very Jinx. Katya is the Jinx in this situation. And while we see Jinx beat Detox and come out on top and be the huge fan favorite, that storyline does not happen here. And I think that is why fans were so let down. But there's no denying, Riggory aside, Alaska dominated the season. Besides one time I think she was saved from the bottom, she earned her track record fair and square. 4 wins in 7 episodes is wild to accomplish, and she deserved, in my opinion, every one of those 4 wins. All Stars 2 works because of the heroes and the villains, the story arcs that all come back from prior seasons, and the new ones that form throughout this season. Katya coming back from last season more self-assured and in a much better place mentally, and dominating the second half of the competition is so satisfying to watch. Rolaska Talks all coming back together and having to navigate this new twist and balance saving their friends with making strategic decisions is incredible TV. Tatiana and Alyssa coming back after going home way too soon and sending home the villain of the season in a huge dramatic fashion is probably the best narrative moment of the franchise, in my opinion. Fifi coming back hoping to be the hero but still being the villain, yes, sucks for Jeremy, who had real life consequences because this fandom is filled with immature idiots who can't decipher the difference between TV and real life. But you can't say that her story arc this season wasn't brilliantly crafted by producers and comes to a shocking conclusion. It's just good TV. Like I said, production's hand was all over this season, but the storylines are handled so well and the narrative is crafted so perfectly that I literally do not even care. Whereas a season like season 11 makes me actually angry to watch because of the Riggory, All Stars 2, I can acknowledge its presence and not give a damn because it's great TV, just as every season of Drag Race should be. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Again, this video is just my opinions, my takes, and in the grand scheme of things, those mean absolutely nothing. So I want to hear your takes. What do you think was the most rigged moment of the season? Do you disagree with any of my takes? I want to hear what you think. Respectfully, please. That would be stunning. That'd be amazing. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons who are listed up here. And here are also my social media links. It has been a long day solving the mystery of what is Roxy Andrews trying to make clear. I'm listening, girl. I'm waiting. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.